This is a movie review about the movie The Innocents. It starred Deborah Kerr and Michael Redgrave. The movie was based on the book called The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. The screenplay was written by William Archibald and Truman Capote, who used Archibald's own 1950 stage play, also called The Innocents, as a primary source. The movie was produced and directed by J. Clayton. The writer was originally William Archibald, and there was a big brouhaha about the movie script between the director and Archibald. So Truman Capote was brought in to fix things, and hence the final script of the movie. The script winds up following the book, The Turn of the Screw, very closely. So I'll give a short plot summary with no spoilers. The story opens when Miss Giddens gets hired as a governess at an estate home known as Bly. It's her first job, and in her enthusiasm, she commits herself to it totally. The wealthy bachelor who hires her is the uncle of two children he inherited from someone in the family. Now, he is a confirmed bachelor who does not want anything to do with the raising of the children, and he wants the governess to agree to take charge of them without bothering him at all. He is emphatic that she make all decisions without conferring with him. She agrees. Miss Giddens arrives at the Bly estate and meets Flora first, the young daughter, and she is as sweet and delightful as any young girl can be. She's very excited to get to know the new governess. Another lifelong housekeeper lives at the estate, a Mrs. Gross, who has been working in this house from when the selfish bachelor was raised there. It comes out that the previous governess was a good match for the children, but unfortunately she died. One day, Miss Giddens gets an unopened letter that has been forwarded to her by the bachelor. The letter states that Miles, the young boy, has been expelled from school as he has been a bad influence to the other children. The governess remembers that Flora, the sister, announced that her brother was coming home a few days earlier, but he was expected to be in school for a long time, and she thinks this is a bit odd. So when Miles comes home, he's sweet and charming, and Miss Giddens just assumes it was merely a misunderstanding at the school. So throughout the next weeks, the children start acting strangely or doing odd things. As time passes, Miss Giddens sees a woman with dark hair at a distance from the mansion, and she also sees a man who comes up very close to the window in the house one time. She recognizes the man from a picture in the attic that she found during an innocent game of hide and seek with the children. That's all I'm going to say about the story so I don't ruin anything for anyone. Other than to say this is a great, scary house movie as well as a great Gothic tale. So what can an author learn from this movie? Let's take a look. First of all, the atmosphere. This movie was filmed partly on location at a Gothic mansion in Sheffield Park in Sussex, England, with additional footage shot at Shepperton Studios in Surrey. The Gothic atmosphere in this movie was amazing, and I give it an A+. It was also one of the best spooky house movies I have ever seen. Early in the story, the governess chooses to walk the last mile or so to the mansion, allowing the viewer to see a tour of the estate hills, the gardens, and the woodlands. It helped paint the Gothic atmosphere of the story. Now let's look at the audio and sound. The horror atmosphere in this film relied heavily on sound. I would even say the audio of the film was a co-star of the movie. First of all, it opens with a creepy nursery rhyme sung by a child, and without seeing one scene, this alone was haunting. The song became a motif and was heard at other times in the movie. Aside from the music, the other sounds all fit into the Gothic horror ensemble: the flapping bird wings, the floorboards creaking, the wind blowing, the ghost like murmurings. Even the silence was scary at times. Let's look at the stages, the settings, and the era. The mansion home where the movie was shot was beautiful and had the hallways, the staircases, the alcoves, the bay windows, the floor to ceiling windows, and a grandmother's attic. And that's all I'll say so as not to give away too much. Each scene was framed by the director. They chose many different backdrops from the house and the studio to make each scene beautiful in its own way. A new author can take a few still shots from this movie and do an exercise of describing the room, especially if you write any Gothic or historical genres. So now let me focus on the costumes, hair, set design, and props. All of it anchored the story as a historical piece as well as a Gothic story. There was no particular era referenced, but it was, quote, in the olden days. Now let's look at the acting and the character development. The acting was above par by Deborah Kerr, who played the governess, and her arc from excited new governess to what ultimately happens was quite a range, and her acting managed it all very well. Mrs. Gross played an uneducated, lifelong servant and was very convincing. And the children's lines, especially the young boy, were very often adult-like. He handled it better than most kids, so I would give him an A+. The actress playing the daughter had two jobs: be cute and adorable and let out a piercing scream, both of which she aced. She gets an A+ too. So let's look now at the language and the dialogue. The language and the dialogue of the movie also rose to the level of a co-star. There was a mystery that needed to be dropped one clue at a time, and it was. Every scene moved the story forward and scared you with the sounds and the atmosphere at the same time. None of the scenes seemed overly long or clipped short in any way. The dialogue showing the gaslighting was a little vague, and if I had any criticism, that would be it. It was hard to determine whether there was gaslighting or madness going on, but maybe that was the point. It could be that I can see through writers' eyes that the doubt created was what made the viewer keep watching. It could be that simple. Also, in my opinion, in 1961, having The Bachelor say that he didn't want anything to do with the kids was kind of shocking to say out loud with no apologies at that time. Now, this being a British film, it had all the English mannerly chatter about tea and courtesies that are common in English horror movies. As usual, I watch with the closed captions on so I can watch the dialogue and make sure I understand every word. The kids' dialogue was adorable one minute and very strange the next. Facial expressions, emotions. As writers, watching actors emote can be helpful in seeing what parts of their faces and/or bodies move and how they show emotion. Deborah Kerr played a woman who was polite to a fault, but veers into a woman who is scared to death, but determined to get to the truth. Her range in emotions is wide, and this occurred over a completed character arc. Now let's look at tropes and motifs. There were all the usual tropes for scary house movies: the creaking stairs, spooky and eerie sounds, the windows blowing open, ghost sightings, etc. The gardens, mansion properties, lakes, garden vignettes, a spooky tower, and the proverbial grandma's attic. all of which made great backdrops for the story. A note to new writers: watch how each scene is shot in a different corner of the house, giving every scene a unique but balanced look. This is where you see evidence of how the director framed every shot. So, my overall review: the film was engaging and held my interest all the way through. The action and movement was constant and continual. The story moved along all the way to the end. Now, let's look at the moral tale or the message of the movie. The movie opened by showing praying hands, and the governess was the daughter of a pastor. There was an acknowledgement of Christianity in the background once or twice, which I like to see in movies. In my humble opinion, this had great potential to be more of a moral tale or have some kind of a message to it, but the plot left too much to the interpretation of the viewer. That was my only complaint about the movie. But it wasn't the movie's fault. The movie seemed to follow the plot line of the original book, but I haven't read the book, so maybe there was more of a solid moral tale in the book. I just found that the ending wasn't explained enough. It was too ethereal. I don't care for endings where you have to guess what happened or it ends in a way where the viewer decides what happens. As a writer, this seems like cheating the audience to me. That's my only complaint about the movie. Now, would I recommend the movie, and to whom would I recommend it? I would recommend the movie to anyone who likes Gothic stories or scary house movies. I would also recommend this to writers who want to learn about Gothic stories, Gothic settings, and anchoring scenes in historical time periods. This is also a great study in the main character's arc, from excited, insecure governess through all the stages of fear. She also goes from timid to determined as part of her character arc. This is also a great movie to watch to see how important audio is to the atmosphere of a scary house story or a horror story. Now, I watched the movie on YouTube and I'll post the link to it below. But if it's no longer on YouTube when you watch this review, I will also post a link to find it on a website called JustWatch, which tracks movies and everywhere they are being shown. If you liked the video or learned anything, I hope you will give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. To the right are all of my books that are available for purchase on Amazon.com. Most of them are in Kindle Unlimited. I'll see you in the next video.